George from MovieWeb. It's so nice to meet the three of you and to be doing this. I want to start by asking, maybe we can go left to right or my left to right. This was always planned as a 2-season arc, right? And everybody's so satisfied with where it landed, but I'd just love to hear if there's any thoughts or feelings about expanding, going further, finding other things to do. There's such love for what you did and you stuck the landing, but I know fans are so curious about is there any kind of expansion possible?
Let's start with that guy.
All right, why don't we start there?
I mean, I think we all have our questions, when you look to certain characters, like Vi and Caitlin, there's all right, what now? What's next? Echo, him, his vision of Zahn, has it changed? Did this chapter of the, that he's gone through in the second season, that change anything about how he envisions, this place he cares about very much? I think there are those questions. We'll see, if they create kind of a bigger, follow-up for us down the road. There obviously are. Lives continue, and definitely we've been so close to these characters. We'll definitely think about those things.
Yeah, well, that's exciting to hear.
Well, you have to know so much about what happens off screen in order to write what happens on screen. So we have so many things with them that we explored, frankly, that we scenes between characters and moments and what happened to Vi in prison, all of that. We expanded all that in the room so that we would know how to write. And I think we're very happy with how the feeling of that backstory made it into the show and wasn't just show, even though we didn't have those scenes in the show. But why not? If I could do anything, it's I would love to just make all those real. Why not?
Yeah.
Also, we spent so many years on the project. I'm at that point where I need to digest a little bit, enjoy, the positive feedback, but I just need to let it rest for a moment before doing anything else. And the world of Runeterra is so vast that there is so much stuff to do. I'd rather focus on something else for the moment. Yeah.
When you talk about this world, the world building, all the details that go into it, there's a lot to work with, but you're bringing it to life in a different way. And I'm curious if you could talk about some of the challenges or some of the things that you left unexplored, maybe, that were maybe there were little details, because for me, I'm a world building nerd, and watching this show or some of the great other shows or movies, that's the fun part, is there's the intricacy of every detail. And that's one of the things that was so excellent about it. But I'm curious if there were stones left unturned that you're just and parts of the process, just hearing about bringing it to life.
I think when you look at our favorite movies and shows where the world feels like a character, Star Wars is a good example of you look at just the extras you see for 2 seconds and you go, who's that? What's their story? It feels like there is a story on every single character, right? And
then 50 years later, people are still
right. Yeah. Boba Fett is I think the same. Harry Potter and Hogwarts is a place where people, I just want to go there, And so we tried. Those were kind of some of the references for us to say there's a richness here and a level of detail that we want to kind of aspire to. We spend a lot of time thinking about the Chembarons, Zahn, for example. This kind of crime world of different competing industries. The streets the neighborhoods would look differently. Would look different. How they interact. It's kind of what's our Peaky Blinders of Zahn would be super interesting, And so there's a lot of those things where you only have so much real estate in every episode. And there definitely are those, those aspects. Or going on deeper in Piltover as well. We've done so much work there that there's always these stories that haven't been told yet.
But the more you do to expand that idea, even if you run out of real estate runtime wise, we feel it, right? Because we're like,
Yeah.
oh, there's so much there.
Yeah, every Chembaron had a very specific part of the world carved out, that was their specialty, that was their industry, which we never mentioned on screen. We never talked about.
Yeah.
But
They had logos that you never see. But
logos you never see, but you felt it in their design. Like, you could probably look at their design that they spent all this time on and be like, oh, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
In order to portray them correctly, we need to tell ourselves stories, that didn't make it to the movie. But yeah, we had so much fun ideas about these Chembarons, animation-wise.
Yeah.
And I think you can tell as you watch them.
Yeah, I mean, the Smeech is a perfect
Yes,
example, right?
Smeech,
His industry is all about like body augmentation and replacements, and so he's very, very, very short, but gave himself like really long legs, so he can be really tall whenever he wants to be. And so like you have these concepts, and then like through artists you explore them, and you kind of find like the depiction. And so I think it's just so much work went into these things,
I like hearing you talk about the designs that we don't see because we feel them.
Mm-hmm.
They probably inform the writing. Like, right, you talked about the writing room, and like I'm curious if you could talk about an example of something that was like didn't make it in, but the work was worth it. Like because it helped us build what you did see,
oh, there's so many scenes. Honestly, I think the relationship between Vander and Silco, that we only really you finally got a hint of that in episode 5.
Yeah.
But we had a whole story with them. But the show was, are the daughters going to, are they doomed to repeat the sins of their fathers? So we knew what the father's sins were. We knew what that whole story was. We didn't show it to you, but we had the girls sort of follow a path that was similar to that. And then were they going to fall into the same traps that their parents did? So.
Things like that, like the shorthand of what the rest of it is that the audience isn't going to know, but then informs everything you're doing. That's just one of the things that makes this kind of sets it apart.
And then when you saw the alternate reality in our episode 7, that we like that, you got to see the version of that relationship that we had talked about, that we had only seen in backstory. So it did come out in like little parts of the writing, that work that we had done. So
yeah. Is there a particular episode you can pinpoint, each of you, maybe, that you're like most proud of in its totality, across the seasons? It's probably a hard question.
Yeah, hard to say.
I
think
to pick one, but like.
Yeah, I think it's hard to pick. I think I think everyone 207 is very special to everybody. Kind of like the Echo Jinx, Echo Powder episode. Milestone's more for like from like. For us as a team, 103 was just like a big can we do this? And it was like, oh shit, we can. So I think that was just like a tall order where like you knew this scene had to knock it out of the park, and you just kind of just see the different elements come together magically, and that definitely was like okay, we can actually pull this off. So that was very meaningful in terms of giving you confidence.
Gaming, like talking about gaming translating into TV or movies, it's always been like there was supposedly a curse. It's obviously been lifted a number of times, but this is one of the big moments that people cited as like this show was like, no, like you can totally do it and it can be awesome. Was it daunting in some way, like knowing that they one word answer, like yes.
No, I mean
like,
it was very daunting. The list of there were a lot of dead bodies in the basement, of vegan adaptations, and I think, it was a risky investment that we said, hey, instead of, us trying to rely on Hollywood or like the established kind of way of how these adaptations work, which is you find a studio, you collaborate with them, but it's kind of out of your hands, and they kind of do their thing. We just hadn't seen that not work multiple times, and so it was this thing of like, okay, we have no idea how to do this, we have no business out doing this, so but we just no one else can really figure this out, so we just need to be really humble, self-aware, but also confident in our own vision, and just take it on the chin and learn, and that was risky, and frankly no one expected this to go very far, which is why we got away with a lot of things. It was like, hey, we have the crazy, yeah. Yeah.
Do your little thing.
Yeah. Until it peters out, and then it just didn't. And so that was very, very scary because a lot of people with a lot of talent, a lot of money, had tried before, and had kind of run into a wall. So I think it is also part of it's a generational thing too. Where video games are still relatively young. We're now, we all kind of grew up with games. I don't know if you grew up with games too.
Yeah.
But there's just we're kind of the generation where that's really the case.
Yeah.
And so now we're kind of also old enough to be in the roles that we're in. That we can kind of shepherd this fandom and even do these things. Have enough life experience to critically lead these kinds of things. It's like, who did you look to 20 years ago to direct a movie that's based on a video game that actually
grew up playing
that's
video
in their DNA?
That's a really good point.
It's just it didn't exist, So
Gaming
I think,
raised a lot of us at a certain age, and so we're like, no, I live and breathe this stuff.
It's the golden age, I think, for video adaptations. Now we have these people, senior enough to do this. So I think we're only going to see more cool stuff.
Yeah, there's been this strange lines of how gaming has gotten closer to being effective in the way it uses the cinematic tools, and then the cinematic tools, right? You know what I mean? Some of the games got more cinematic, but then the adaptations got more like the games, or more honoring of that.
Yeah. There's world leaders now who are known to be gamers. It's it used to be when we grew up, it was this thing of you don't tell your friends about this because it makes you sound lame, but no, this is a thing now that no matter how impactful and huge people are in the world, they're playing games. Yeah. And it plays a different role now.
You referenced, I've got only a little time left, but you referenced this idea that the fact that there was humility, people were kind of yeah, whatever, we don't really, that was a big help to the ability to learn and grow and make mistakes. I want to hear you all talk a little bit more about that and that process, because I do think that that's where, that echoes things you'll hear people say about Star Wars, or about any of the really great things, is that it was nobody thought it would work, so we could just do it.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything else sort of on that front?
I mean, there was a lot of risk we were taking that, in hindsight, people don't even really talk about it. With 35-minute episodes that they're we talked about that back then, and when did we start? 2015, where they're no, you have hour-long episodes, or you have 23 minutes or whatever, and otherwise you're crazy. Or, we're gonna have kind of 2 pilot episodes, episode 1, episode 2, new characters in episode 2, new storylines, and they're you can't do that. All the characters have to be in the first episode.
You can't do adult animation and
no
start with kids, and start showing kids, and I was that to me was in my interview, I was you guys are going to show, you're not going to do the champions and then flash back. You're going to show us, we're going to live with them during these life-changing moments. That's different. I want to be a part of that.
So it was it helped us that we didn't know better. But it's just humans like patterns.
Yeah.
And this was not following a pattern, and so you kind of just saw a lot of smoke coming out of people's ears when they were hearing about this. But I think also it's important that we kind of challenge ourselves to preserve that, because otherwise it's very easy just to go just make more of the same. It's
no. Don't do what you're doing. Challenge patterns. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
So much.
Appreciate it.